Hello everybody, this is Yasmin from Yarkspiri fantasyart.com, and today I'm going to go through some printing basics. So in this tutorial it's mainly going to cover Photoshop because I mainly use Photoshop for my illustrations, therefore I prepare my files via Photoshop for printing. So before we begin, I'm actually going to, as you can see, I have my guides here, so I want to get rid of that just so I could start showing you guys from scratch what I actually do in order to prepare an image for printing purposes. Now, as you can see, I'm getting rid of them, and essentially these are guides that I was able to just click and drag with the ruler enabled, and by clicking and dragging in the opposite direction, I'm able to actually get rid of them. So first things first, I have to actually crop this image to a set size. Normally I already have a template saved so that when I start drawing it's automatically saved in a proper template, so I don't have to worry about this. But in this instance I'm going to change it to a standard printing size, not framing size, because those are different, at least here in Canada, and most likely in the US since we deal with the same size ratios here in Canada and US. So 8.5, so 8.5 inches is my width by 11 inches. Now it normally does default to pixels, but if you type in IN it will automatically default to inches, so I don't have to worry about that. I want this saved as 300 dpi, pixels per inch. So I've set my resolution to that. So now when I crop this, it will automatically save this file as 300 dpi, 8.5 by 11 exactly. So I don't have to do anything else but crop it at this point. Okay, so I've just cropped it. And now what I'm going to do is, before I actually start drawing anywhere, I want to make sure that I stay within a safe zone. Now when you're printing, if you're printing multiple images on maybe a 12 by 18 sheet of printing paper, then you want to include something called crop marks. And those crop marks allow you to actually trim the image down. So in this case, I'm going to create a safe zone for my drawing so that when I draw, I can essentially draw within the safe zone and not have to worry about any of that portion actually being cropped. So as I prefer to give myself a little bit of extra room so that I can resize this easily to like a 5 by 7 later, I give myself an inch of room. So that's why you normally see me actually drawing fairly close to the center, is because I'm trying to ensure that I have enough bleed area. So I'm just going to create a box in the center here to represent the drawn area. Just going to fade that out a bit. Okay, so this is my safe zone. This washed out white area is my safe zone. Typically when you're setting an image up for printing and you want to make sure that it's a certain size, you would normally include 1/4 of an inch of bleed. And so essentially you would just use the ruler tool. I'm just going to show you how I did this. Essentially I turned on my ruler tool here. So to turn it on, just hold down Control and hit the R key. Gets rid of it. So hold down Control and hit the R key again, and it brings it back. So when I click and drag off of that ruler area, it allows me to put a guide on my image. And right now I've set it to 1/4 of an inch on the side here. I'm going to keep on doing that, and this gives me an idea of the areas that will be removed when it's printed. So if I do that here again, so as you can see, this is definitely this outer perimeter is the area that will most definitely be removed. So I'm just gonna color this in bright red so that you can actually see that. Now, the reason why you include a bleed in your image is typically these images, when they're cropped down by machine, the machine will offset itself ever so slightly. It's a minute amount, but it does make a significant difference as you cut multiple images. So what you want to do is you set this bleed area so that when you do crop the image, you're not worried about losing the important information. And that's the reason why I create a guide. So this is just my really rough guide here, and essentially my image is on the bottom here. But this gives me all the relevant information, so I know exactly what portion will be safe from printing and what portions will be most likely trimmed. Now, when you're creating a bleed, essentially a bleed is extra painted area that you want to have overflowing into the bleed area so that if they do make a miscut or it's off by a 1/16 of an inch or less, it doesn't show up as being a mistake. And that's the reason why you create a bleed. So as you can see, I did 1/4 of an inch of a bleed. That's the standard for most printers, at least here in Canada and most likely in the US, once again, because we do share very similar printing and formatting sizes. So now that I already know which areas will be definitely trimmed, I'm just going to turn off these two layers for a sec and create a new one. I'm just going to I just used the marquee tool for this. You could use the pen tool, but essentially I'm marking the bleed area by creating a little box and filling that with white, because in this case, white will show up more than if I used a different color. And I'm duplicating that and dragging it to my next point, and then taking these 2 points and repeating it, but for the bottom instead. Okay, normally I would spend more time actually making sure that this is accurate, but for this example, I'm not going to take too much time because it's not required. I'm going to duplicate that little tab and then rotate it by 90 degrees. And replace it in this area. Now when you're creating your bleed area, you actually don't want it to actually make contact with that line. You want it to offset just by a tiny bit. So I'm fixing that right now for this one. And I'm just going to duplicate it for this one here. And I need to modify my top 2 as well. So I'm just going to bring them out a bit. It doesn't have to be out by too much, but it is important that they be out enough so that they don't show up in the printable area. And to duplicate these, I'm just holding down the Alt-Shift button as I left-click, mouse, and drag. And that's a really easy way of just duplicating an object. These are the last 2. Move them down a bit, and essentially I have my crop marks already there. So if I want to turn off my guides, then all I have to do is hold down the Control key and actually press the colons, and it turns it off so I can actually see what it looks like. And this is what the printer would actually normally cut into, is this area here. The reason why you offset it is literally so that that portion doesn't show up within the red area or the cropped area. So that's just a really simple way of setting up your page for printing. Now, another thing you need to do, though, is you also need to make sure that you have some pretty specific settings here. The standard resolution for most printing is 300 dpi, pixels per inch. So you do need to make sure that's set to that. And then you also want to make sure you set your width and height to appropriate size as well. So in this case, it would be printed on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and therefore I have set it to 8.5 by 11 once again. Now, you would normally only set up the crop lines for this if I was actually cropping this. So I did 1/4 of an inch of bleed, which means that my actual size for my image is actually 8 by 10.5, which is close to actually a framing size. Framing sizes, at least here in Canada and US, is actually 8 by 10, and that is what you should normally actually set up your files for. As long as you draw within this white area here, the safe zone, then you have plenty of room to fit it in 8 by 10. Also, rule of thumb is if you're doing your signature as well, you should always do your signature at least an inch away from either corner. So in this case, I would do, if I was doing a signature on this, I would actually do my signature right here, because then it wouldn't be too much an image, but it also would not be completely covered as well. So that's just some of the basics for when you're actually doing printing, and I hope this was useful. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon. So thank you and take care.